Well, welcome everyone. We're so pleased you were able to join us today. Are we recording?
Yes.
Our guest today is McLean Sorton, and he's here from the Colorado Department of Agriculture, where he works on organic certification and is an expert on the process itself of becoming certified organic. And he's going to walk us through some of the elements, the steps of that process. But first, we're going to have an introductory slide for you to take a look at. You can introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lydia. As the slide says, my name is McLean Sorton. I've been with the Colorado Department of Agriculture for 3 years now under the same grant that is actually paying for this event, the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. It's a federal program. Essentially what I do is present at conferences, give workshops, give farm days. I've actually parked in that parking spot and given a class right here at CSU last year for the organic certification process and how it relates to other labels. I started in the organic process or in the organic certification industry in 2019 and essentially began reviewing applications for organic, and then decided that I did not want to continue to just sit behind a computer. So I became an inspector. So I've been inspecting since 2020, and this is a small group. So if there's any questions, please do raise your hand or interrupt me for clarification. I'm going to kind of run through the history of organic certification, why we in fact have it a legal term, and then the certification process, and then we can dive into any Q&A or what's relevant. Yeah.
Are you coming back in roughly a week for the next organic session?
Who's putting that on?
We are.
Same group.
No, I
You're
won't be in
invited.
state. Do you, the 30th, 1 week from today?
We're going to have a panel discussion of the
Okay.
costs, benefits, and challenges associated with organic production in northern Colorado.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're excited about that. We will record that one as well.
I'll check my calendar.
Yep. And if you're available, we'd love to have you join us.
Be there. Yeah. So a little bit about my background. Grew up in Southwest Iowa, nothing but corn, soybeans, hogs, ethanol, now wind energy. I went to Iowa State for undergrad, did the Peace Corps in Nicaragua right after undergrad, and didn't really have intentions to go back to school, but Nicaragua, I was a sustainable agriculture volunteer. It was paradigm shifting, and so I went back to Iowa State for a master's in sustainable agriculture and landscape architecture, and then decided to continue my work mainly out west and internationally. I think
I got you.
great. You did? Awesome. ¿Qué parte?
Amazonas, Illinois.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm working on a water project. We'll talk
Okay,
after.
I did water.
Cool.
I sponsored it too.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So I started in 2019 with Where Food Comes From. I still do inspections for them, contract based. And then after that, I moved on to QCS because they had an international job. I lived in Quito, Ecuador, certifying grower groups on the coast, and mainly for export to the EU. So it was not only in the National Organic Program, which is the federal government here, but the EU standards, which a lot of times are in line. But out of Ecuador, it was certifying grower groups for mainly bananas, but also mangoes, avocados, and some tea, as well as the Dominican Republic. Once I got back from there, I saw this. I had lived in Colorado and wanted to stay in Colorado, and so I found this job at the state. I've been here 3 years now. So we're going to go through, as I mentioned, why we have the organic industry at all, give a brief history of it, then go into the certification process, and then some of the benefits and challenges. I now know you're going to go through that next week, and so
That's good.
I can talk about my perspective on it and answer any questions you have, but I'll focus basically on whatever perks your interest and keeps you awake. All right. You want to click there, Lydia?
Oops, sorry.
So the roots of the organic industry began in Europe back in the 20s through the 50s, and it was a response to the rise of industrial agriculture, mainly monocultures, and also the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. There's a huge emphasis on soil health because of the destructive nature of industrial agriculture itself, creating these monocultures and therefore contributing to wind and water erosion. Next. Sir Albert Howard was the father of this organic mindset in the EU. He started to notice like sick land equals sick people. So he came up with healthy soils, healthy plants, healthy animals, and humans as kind of a tagline. He focused a lot on soil organic matter and played a critical role in understanding the microbiome that exists underneath our feet. And he never actually used the term organic. Jad Rodale from the US was like, oh, he's onto something, and we're also in trouble with what we're doing to our land. He was inspired by this movement, and he's known as the father. He's introduced organic farming concepts to the US and founded the Rodale Institute, which I'm sure each and every one of you are familiar with. Yeah, great. So again, to mimic and mirror what was going on in Europe, the US essentially had a massive uptick post World War II in pesticide use, and therefore pesticide hazards to human health, animals, biodiversity, decline in soil health, water pollution, it's awful, and then the cost of synthetic inputs. Agribusiness boomed during this time because as soon as you buy the seeds, you're also buying the fertilizer, you're also buying everything else that goes with the contract, and you're agreeing that you're not going to be saving your seeds anymore, you're going to be buying them again next year. So loss of family farms comes into place and local markets become regional, which then translate to global. So the early organic community in the United States, there's no government oversight. So where am I? Yeah, organic was based on a local scale, and it was a handshake between the consumer and the farm that they knew the food was coming through or from. Information acquired from other farmers and Rodale Institute, Farmers Almanac played a big role, as well as just local open air markets that we now call farmers markets. No organic premiums and formal marketplaces, basically just this is what I believe food should be and how it should be raised. And that's what I'm going to do to bring to market, and the communities would support it. In the 1970s, different groups of both farmers and consumers developed their own organic standards and guidelines for certification processes because they were running into people showing up at the organic or the market saying, I'm organic, and there's no verification or no teeth behind it. Anyone can kind of claim it, and there's no real repercussions. In the 1980s, 3 different states, Oregon, Maine, and California, all had 3 separate standards for what organic actually meant. And there was a lot of confusion in the marketplace because of it. Their own rules and regulations by the 80s. Go ahead. As I mentioned, a lot of confusion in the marketplace. This one says that they don't use this. This one says that they do support that, but they say that this is contradictory to that. So everyone in the marketplace was like, what does organic actually mean? This led to, go ahead. This led to the Organic Foods Production Act of 1990. Basically, these states and other concerned advocacy groups for developing something that was all under the same umbrella came together and said, we can't regulate ourselves and we can't agree. USDA, will you please do so for us? So that is when they started writing the regulations. Go ahead. In 1997, it was met with outrage that it included sewage sludge, GMOs, and synthetic pesticides in their first iteration of what organic should be. The USDA quickly withdrew this, and in 2000, they finally adopted the final rule. It was released into 2001, and then in 2002 was the first time we ever had a product with the actual logo, the USDA organic sticker on it. Go ahead. So that takes me to the certification process and why we have certification bodies. Basically, the way that the USDA said we're going to have regulations and we're going to be in charge of regulating all these farms, not only nationally, but internationally. They said, great. What we're going to do is not take on all that work. We don't have the capacity to. We're going to accept applications for accredited certification bodies to therefore manage different farms and handlers throughout the supply chain that want to be certified organic. The NOP, National Organic Program, still to this day, is the overseeing body, the regulatory body that regulates all the certification bodies that then regulate all the clients that are certified organic. Go ahead.
Is the funding for all the certification bodies, is that like federal through the USDA, or do those certification bodies have to run themselves?
They run themselves. Great question. There's for-profits, nonprofits, and state run. There's different fee schedules for each one. Typically, it's going to be the fees that keep their lights on and their doors open. So there may be grants that they can qualify for through USDA or other federal avenues for funding for running their operations. But majority of the funds for certification bodies are made through offering their services through their fee schedule. So organic certification process. So I work for CDA. I've worked for 4 different certification bodies, maybe 5 or 6 now, just with who I do inspections for as a contracted inspector. But one thing's the same, and that's the certification process. What you're going to do with whoever you're applying to is submit or call them, get a fee schedule, and then they're going to say, great, here's step 1, submit an application along with fees. And you say, okay, that's great. Once you do that, they're going to hand you either a stack of paper or a database that says, here's your organic system plan. And you're going to fill out different worksheets or modules, some organizations call it, to essentially highlight everything that you're doing on your farm. One's going to be like, give me maps and total acreage, give me a growing schedule or a planting schedule for what you're planning on this year. Are you doing any cover crops? Because that's going to relate to, the cover or the crop rotation standard. They're going to ask for any inputs that you're using, whether it's synthetic or natural, pesticides, fertilizers. Basically, I mean, once you get into handlers, then it's any type of inputs that you're using that doesn't count as an ingredient. It's a cleaning solution, essentially. They're going to ask for clean out records if you're using shared equipment. They're going to go into how do you prevent commingling contamination on your farm from your organic crop coming into contact with conventional product or prohibited substances. So that's the difference between commingling contamination and what are your organic control points to make sure that your process does not allow that contact. So once you submit your application, you'll then have an on-site inspection. Inspector comes out, says, hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. I looked at your OSP the last few days. I understand that this is what you're growing. This is what you're doing. I'm going to verify that everything that you wrote down is in fact what is happening here. So what I would do is start with like a process flow or a field tour of your operation. Show me what you're growing and where it's growing. Show me where you store your inputs. Where is your equipment stored? What is essentially your plan for the coming year? Are you going to go wheat on wheat on wheat, or is there something to break that up? If you've had 5 years of alfalfa, What are you gonna put it into next year? Those types of things. And then the biggest item with the audit is, do you have the record keeping capacity to comply with the organic standards? And so that is going to be a mass balance and a trace back. With the mass balance, I'm going to take, like, let's just say today I'm doing an inspection, so it's June 22nd. I'm going to go back April 1st to present, and I'm going to say, what was your inventory then? Typically 0. Then what did you produce or produce in a farmer's context? And then what have you sold? And what are you anticipating selling? And then what's left over in inventory to be sold? And make sure that those numbers line up. And then with a trace back, what I'm going to do is look at a final sale that just went out and say, who's the client? What's the invoice? How did it get there? Did you contract the transportation, or did you transport it? If so, is that transportation dedicated organic, or is it shared? And if it's shared, is there a clean out affidavit? I'm essentially going to trace it through the supply chain all the way back to when you harvested it, to when you planted it, to when you acquired the seed, and look at the invoice on how it got to you. And so that's going to be the record keeping side of what we as inspectors are looking for when we're on the farm. So if we say we sold, 40,000 pounds of tomatoes this year, and then I trace it back and I look at your seed invoice, and the seed invoice says, you only bought enough seed for 20,000 pounds to be produced, I'm going to see the discrepancy and I'm going to ask why. Did you get seeds elsewhere? Was that saved from a previous year? Those types of things. With that, I'll finish my inspection report. I'll have a list of findings or anything additional needed to be added or subtracted to the OSP, and we'll conduct an exit interview. The exit interview essentially says, here's the summary of what we did, and here's the highlights. I send that back to the certification body, and then they make a certification decision based on the findings or the inspection report that I submit as the inspector. That is when the certification body says, great, you're good. We're going to hand you an organic certificate, assuming that there's no major conditions that failure to comply. And then it's an annual process. So you have that certificate, you're good. Next year, we're going to send you an email and say, would you like to renew, or you want to essentially surrender your certification? So if you choose to renew, then you pay fees again, have another on-site inspection. Any questions? Yeah.
What those fees look like, or does it depend on the size of the farm, or what does it depend on?
Great question. So majority of the certification bodies now do it on gross organic sales. You'll fall into a certain category, and it's kind of the honor system, knowing that you will be audited, and we'll look at, how much you sold, and typically select something that's going to be gonna give us insight into your, like, what the majority of your farm is growing. But with that, there are a few certification bodies out there that are based on acreage still, or they're based on irrigated versus dry land, or there's specific like greenhouse operation fees or whatever. But the fee schedules in the organic certification world are some of the most complex that you can find. And some of them are listed publicly. Others you have to inquire, put your information in, and then they'll send it to you. And so they change every few years to keep up with inflation and cost of everything else. But yeah, I would say the cheapest that you're looking at for whatever you're doing is going to be in the $1,000 to $1,300 range on the low end. And that's if it's smaller production, and that includes the inspection fee in it. And there's clients that I've done that's like 7, 8, 9, $10 million in gross organic sales. And then I just report that, send it back, and then they take care of it the following year with what to charge, with what category they fall into. But yeah, I would say the majority of the folks are in the lower category. Definitely. Or lowest. Yeah, go ahead.
Are there any, is it possible, or are there any additional challenges of certifying leased land?
Great question. We get this all the time, and it does not disqualify you from organic certification. What we ask for is a land use affidavit signed by the landowner acknowledging that you are, in fact, or going to be producing organic on that farm. And what we need, if you have not been in control of it for 36 months, we need an affidavit from him or her saying what it was that they did on the land before and any inputs that were applied. There can't be organic production until 36 months after the last prohibited substance application date. That is to say, to harvest, not to planting. So say you're at year 2.5 and you have a crop that's going to go in, you know, in about 6 months, you can harvest it. As long as it's 36 months back from that harvest date, not the planting date, then you're eligible for organic certification. And the leased land issue is the same as if you owned it, as long as you have the landowner acknowledging in writing, and they're just going to ask you for a letter. Sometimes it's even an email saying, yeah, that's okay. And as long as that's a part of your documentation in your OSP, your organic system plan, you're all right. Yeah.
What about, another question, pressure treated wood in a greenhouse that trace it potentially on or above?
So pressure treated wood, it's not going into the ground that anything's being grown on, right? It's all greenhouse. So it's going to depend on interpretation of regulation based certification body to certification body. They're all going to have their different qualms or internal policies about how we handle the situation. What I've seen is that because it's container growing, it's a barrier and therefore not a contamination risk. And so I would get clarity on that before you move forward with an application. Call whoever it is that you are looking to be certified with and make sure that in a greenhouse situation, here's like my map, here's my process flow, here's how none of my growing medium comes into contact with this pressure treated wood. What is your stance on it before I move forward with an application? That's my best advice.
Yeah.
For sure.
Those are the two questions that I've
That's why you're here.
not pursued being organic, because I'm like, those would be the two reasons I would expect to
Yeah.
not be able to get through.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's
and if you're
plausible.
right, if you're putting treated wood into like an outdoor organic garden, then there's going to be an issue. And there's ways to mitigate that. You can have your organic farm start here, and then the treated woods in the buffer zone. And so it's not affected. And as long as you're showing that you're preventing contamination in that way, then certification bodies will interpret it different ways, but you'll at least have an argument to stand on. If you're saying like my organic boundary is right here, and here's my buffer zone, that's in the buffer zone, and see what they have to say. I've seen folks interpret it different ways, you know, but work with them and yeah, just be honest about your situation. They can't consult, they can't advise, they can't tell you go buy this material or anything like that. But what they can do is say, here's the regulation, here's how we're interpreting it. And then you can go from there. Yeah.
And then FSA offers cost share, right?
So NRCS,
Or NRCS.
oh yes, it's through the FSA office. But and it used to be under EQIP. Right now, a lot was cut. And the organic cost share program, to my knowledge, is still dormant. It isn't forever gone, but right now they're not issuing payments at rebate, $750 per scope that you're certified. So say you're both a producer and then you also package something and you want to become a handler, or you dried it or fermented it in some way and then sold it as a handler. Both of those scopes would require higher fees, but you'd be eligible for higher reimbursement as well, $750 per scope. So it'd be $1,500 a year. But right now, I mean,
On pause.
Yeah.
Polite way to say it.
Mhm. So keep Googling it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Did you,
Yeah, we can go.
so you touched on this bit between different companies because the NOP sets sort of like the overall standards and regulations.
Yeah.
But like, say, you're looking at like, QCS or like, the Pennsylvania one, like PCO.
PCO.
Yeah. So do they sometimes like between companies have different regulations that they might implement, or they should have all the same ones, but they interpret them different? Or
Right.
they're more, some are more strict on one thing than others?
Great question. So I'm sure that if you dig hard enough, you can find somewhere where there's inconsistencies. For a glaring example, some certifications say no, absolutely not to hydroponics, and others say yes. And so that is highly contentious in the industry. The way that you'd find something different usually is going to be at the administrative level or process level because of the way internal policy is written. It typically isn't going to be around any specific regulation. All the regulations have to be the same. How they're interpreted is a little different. Some folks that have the capacity at a bigger certification body, or that have, like, staff that have been there 30 years that know every material that's ever come through for review, are going to say, great, we know this product, we've done an internal review on it, it's restricted, can you show that you met the restriction, and then we'll allow it. Others will say, we don't have the capacity to review this, we're gonna have to charge you to outsource the review or to pay PCO to tell us what you've ruled in the past on this, because we don't have the capacity to do it. Or I can't say it's not the expertise, but capacity is the better word. And so they'll say, I know that so-and-so is using this, we can't allow it because when we reached out to the manufacturer, they told us that they already have paid an NDA with another certification body, they know it's organic.
But then when we ask them, they're like, no, we're not gonna disclose that, that's internal. And so that's where there can be a little bit of butting heads
with what specifically is allowed, or how quickly those get reviewed and turned around. Some folks wait till the week that they want to apply something, and then they're calling and you're ringing off the hook, and it's like, hi.
I don't know. That's like, I'm the intake guy for new applications. Let me talk to this person. And it can just take longer as certain certification bodies. I wouldn't say it's regulatory though. It's because of administrative capacity or internal policy that is different. Like some folks are going to charge you for that. And other ones are going to say, absolutely no, we don't charge you that. So those types of things.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of has two parts. So like, how exact can your, and is your parcel line, like when you get certified? And also, if you have neighbors, does it depend what their practices are?
100%. Yeah. Great. So, when we ask for the maps and the OSP, we expect that it's usually a screenshot of Google Earth. And then you can literally print that off and draw in pen or marker over it saying 84 acres, or 80, like whatever. We'll compare it to FSA maps if we need to, if there's discrepancies about it. But a lot of times we're going to take your word. We need to see buffer zones in place where you're butting up against conventional land.
And how big do those?
It can vary. Like, say you have a whole bunch of evergreens in a ditch, and that is only 15 feet from where conventional takes place, and the wind's the right direction, and you're up from them, and that's downhill, and their stuff's not running off onto you, that's fine. They specifically don't put a regulatory number on how far the distance is. A lot of times I'll see a simple road, a fence line, and then a road on the other side, and it's roughly anywhere from 25, 45 feet. And then if I'm in Ecuador and I see something that is like, oh, it's 4 meters. It's like, okay, well, that's 12 foot. And so does it make sense? It's really up to the discretion of how you, as the client, talk about how this is sufficient to prevent contamination. And have you notified your neighbors? Do you have no spray signs up? Do they know on a windy day if you are on the wind side of them to stop spraying before theirs ends? And a lot of times it gets down to, if we see something that's super obvious in the field, it's like, this was a drift case. That doesn't look like that does, and it's because of its relation. We can always take a sample, soil or plant tissue, if we see something to suspect. But I will say, yeah, there's no specific width that we're looking for. It's all contextual.
Okay, so like if your neighbors are, they're not certified organic, but they're probably not spraying things, like, do you have to I guess you go out and it's case by case and you just see?
Yeah, 100%. Is it a native grass hayfield that's not certified? Like they're not applying anything to that. So it is up to, or what would they be applying? Or they might spray for weeds.
Weed management
Yeah.
from the natural area department.
Yeah. Whereas I'm also getting at, like, we have our shared farm site where there's 6 farms, like they're all that kind of, even I guess it's like 25 feet of buffer
Yeah.
between each plot, but it's really pretty close. Like we're all just right there in the same plot. And if one person wanted to get certified, but not everybody, then one person could, just so like
Yeah.
so long as you're not seeing anything concerning from the neighbors.
Right. If it's, managed organically, and especially if they're willing to disclose like their inputs list to you, not to us, to you, and then you could say like at inspection, like, I know that this farm right here uses this.
Yeah.
Like, then, like, great. It shows that you have like great communication with your neighbors. Like it's a good relationship. Just because they're conventional, being not certified organic, does not mean that like there's going to be reason for a lot higher scrutiny in a buffer zone where it's an obvious case of synthetic pesticide application versus a small diversified veggie farm or something like that. So yeah, it's case by case, and it's up to your reviewers and the communication with it. Yeah.
Is there any data about the number of certification efforts and the number of passes versus failures? I mean, it sounds like there's such a varied approach to certification, case by case, different companies doing it.
Yeah.
Do you know of anyone collecting data on success rate for getting certified?
We've had the same conversation at our annual meeting year after year. And so there's the organic integrity database, and you can go in and find anyone that's certified at any given time.
Mhm.
And then you can also switch the status to retired or suspended. So suspended won't necessarily tell you how long they were certified or for what reason they were suspended. It could be like they had a family emergency,
Right.
and the main contact no longer is with them,
Mm.
and we're calling them, and like then it just went to non-compliance, notice of major non-compliance, notice of suspension. Now you're suspended, and it was 100% innocent.
Mm.
Or like it can be the very opposite of that, and that like it's fraudulent activity.
Mhm.
You're trying to sell conventional as organic, and we caught you, and now you're suspended indefinitely. As for how many applications come through either as new applicants or as renewal applicants every single year, and how many pass versus fail, I don't know, because those that fail that never have been certified before don't make it into this organic certification database. And there's a confidentiality that we can't talk specifically about their
Anything,
operations to
okay.
anyone else. So
In your experience, would you say that more than 50% of the applications pass? Would you say that more than 80% of the applicants pass?
So by the time they reach getting an inspector,
Yeah.
they've already passed the eye test of the initial review process to say, yeah, you're eligible. Yeah, you're not using any prohibited substances. yeah, you meet the land use requirements, all those things. So like all the boxes are checked. It's going out to verify that what they say they're doing is what they're doing. So I see way higher than even 80% pass
Mhm.
rates. When a non-compliance is written, it's because I forgot to update the OSP, and what I'm looking at is 2024s, and I need 2026s, and like those types of things. It's administrative, or it's around record keeping. I could not trace back this sale to acquisition of seed or ingredient, whatever it be. Like records are insufficient. And so they get a minor non-compliance for that. And what are they going to do to correct it? Is it going to be an internal training? Is it going to be, we got this new software and here's how we log it now? Those types of things. So I would, there's only a handful in my 7 years that I've ever seen that, no, you're not gonna be certified anymore. And that can even be innocent, but they accidentally applied a prohibited substance, so wait 36 months and reapply. So,
Does the state of Colorado see like 100 new applicants a year or like 1,000?
so we're relatively small, CDA. And I can talk about this because it's all publicly available. We have just over 200, maybe 215 to 30, somewhere in there.
Total, like certified total.
Certified total.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But if you were to look at where food comes from, also publicly available, you can go into the organic integrity database and look at their client list and see thousands. Like over 1,000. I don't know if they're over 2,000, but they were also the result of buying or acquiring and merging two different certification bodies, one out of California, one out of North Dakota, and bringing them together. And then also working outside of the state. They work nationally, whereas state entities only work with operations that are within the state. Because typically, well, they have the capacity to do it because they have internal inspectors. They don't have contracted inspectors. Say like, oh, I have like this farm in Pennsylvania, like where food comes from can take that application and say, we have a contract inspector that lives like, an hour away from you. This would work out great. Whereas the state is like, you need to be at least within 10 miles of the border or, close enough for it to be justified. So, yeah.
As
Go ahead.
somebody who's just, I farm vegetables, I sell to restaurants, farmers markets, food hubs.
Yeah.
Is that a single scope?
Yeah, so single scope and is your restaurant like, again, it gets back to like,
I sell single ingredients, to them, nothing value added.
right. But are they requesting it to be certified, or is this out of something that you just want to do?
It's of my own interest.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and it can open up other markets. And if your main market is a restaurant right now, I would very much so advertise to them like, hey, I'm actually certified organic as opposed to just growing organically. If that is of interest to you to advertise like use of organic ingredients on a menu or something like that. So yeah. But definitely don't be using organic ingredients if you're not certified because it is a legal term. So
I
yeah.
have two questions related to that, about like suspension, because organic very much is a brand label. And if someone does get suspended because of failure to comply or things like that, I mean, they still would have like their placards and things that say that like, would they not still have a logo and that they just throw that up at their farm stand and
Cease
like
and
nobody
desist.
knows? Okay.
Yeah,
So it's
they
like
get a
legal
legal
action.
letter
Yeah.
saying you cannot, the use of the logo, the
Yeah.
seal, as we
Yeah.
call it in the industry, is regulated. And so anyone that's using that after they've been suspended or using it without ever applying is subject to
Okay, yeah, so there's pretty
a
heavy,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah,
Who's doing that enforcement?
The-
CDA,
the National Organic Program.
NOP?
Yeah.
And how do they know? Someone has to tell them.
Yeah, there's an anonymous
Oh,
complaints. Yeah,
Oh.
it's NOP compliance at USDA.gov. Yeah.
They're coming from like CDA, essentially.
It could come from me. It could come from someone that worked in the industry that saw a non-compliant label in the grocery store.
Yeah.
That just said, here's a picture of it, like you guys deal with it. And that, I mean,
The farmer's market, that farm's not.
yeah,
Have
and
the sign.
I see that all the time too. The farmer's market, for sure. And
Not us, we're perfect, we're perfect.
I will also say, there is an exemption in that if you make under $5,000 gross organic sales per year, you can claim organic, but you can't use the seal. And it's meant for roadside farm stands, and it's meant for like small scale operations that you're just selling at a farmer's market. And that's where it's sticky, because we don't want to exclude them, yet they're not making enough or contributing enough to the marketplace to like have that be worth their time, like all of this effort. If they're making under 5,000 and they're expected to pay 1,300 minimum
For a year.
per year and not
Mm.
be reimbursed now, like, yeah,
Mm.
there's
Yeah, that's interesting, that exemption, yeah, there's things to seal that they use the words.
yeah, and they're subject to being audited and unannounced. So they need to have their stuff together, and also how much resources are gonna be spent. I'll also say that internationally, as you living in Peru might know, especially with coffee and quinoa and everything else, cacao for sure. Grower groups are how things operate, especially across Latin America.
Yeah.
And we don't have that structure, at least not well established, like a cooperative. We have cooperatives, but not cooperatives that are applying as one legal entity as certified organic. And so that is something that's talked about quite a bit. Like just thinking about having multiple herb growers across the Front Range or something like that, if they all want to be under one brand, yet not pay as much as it takes, it requires a lot of organization. An ICS, an internal control system, basically has to be another layer of certification bodies that's regulating all the members. And so it takes someone very invested that understands everything. And we've seen them, grower groups in the United States. They're not common like they are internationally. And a lot of it has to do with culture, transportation, like ruralness of where everything's grown, so.
My second question was, if you have value added products like jams, jellies that are certified.
Yeah.
Do all their raw materials have to be organic?
Yes. So, yeah, I think.
Next slide.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide, see what's there. Yes, perfect. Four categories.
Oops.
So we have single ingredients within organic. Oh, we got 5 minutes. 100% organic, that has to be single. If it's a jam or a jelly, then you need to, in order to use the seal, 95% or more minus water and salt to be the composition of your value added product, or multi-ingredient as we call it. If you want it to be certified organic, however, not use the seal, but make a made with organic ingredients claim, then it needs to be 70% or higher. And there's regulations around what order those need to be listed in. Basically, it's top percentage down, and you can't list more than a few. And then less than is not eligible, less than 70%. So something like that. Yeah, I don't know, you guys. I'd rather spend the last 5 minutes talking to you about whatever relevant questions you have, but I can kind of go through the benefits that I've seen if there's no questions right now.
Where do people fail? Or like, where do people struggle the most to like appropriately be ready for certification?
As a farmer or a handler, if you know how to use a computer, you're way better off than the most.
And it's free too.
Yeah, like if you can work a database, if you know like your password to your email, or at least have it saved and can log in and remember those types of things. In all honesty, like sometimes it's like these people have the best of intentions and it's so disorganized because they literally just don't know how to use a database, and they're requesting a hard copy, and it's like then pull out a scanner and like upload these as PDFs and then like manually enter them into our database. And like that's where there's a lot of hangups, honestly. Yeah, that's what I've seen by far the most. Or I see people call and they're like, all right, give me a list of everything I need to be certified. I want to have everything so I can hit a grand slam right when opportunity comes. It's like the application literally is the directions of filling out how to be organic with citations around every regulation and everything else. So like the application is not a test. It's not like you submit it and then see if you passed or not. It's a back and forth between you and the certification body on what it is that is like making you eligible to comply or what needs to change in order for you to be eligible to comply. So it's a very much so a back and forth of understanding what needs to be done for you to be certified organic, as opposed to, I'm gonna have everything perfect and submit it and then be like, oh, we also need this, and what is going on here? It's like, gotta be okay with that back and forth in regular communication. If someone submits everything and then they get an email back saying like, hey, on module, H3, this is inconsistent with what you said you're sourcing here, and how does the input that you said you're using fit into your process flow? Those types of questions, just answer them and we'll fill it in for you, or we'll ask you to just like clarify it and resubmit, and we just get crickets. So those types of interactions are troublesome because then they get frustrated, or it's like, I already paid the application fee, now you're asking me to do more. It's like, yeah, because we need more before we can release your file for inspection, those types of things.
For somebody who's really on top of their stuff, about how long does it take to get through it?
Great question. So some certification bodies offer expedited fees, and you pay extra, even extra, to be certified in a couple of weeks, essentially. Other ones don't even allow it, and they'll just say, hey, my timeline during this growing season is 6 to 8 weeks from the time that you submit a completed OSP, not from the time that you just pay. Because some people pay and then 4 months later, I get a request like, hey, could you resend that application link? Because I forgot I applied. So it's from the time that we receive a completed OSP to do the review, to contract or assign an inspector to have them come out, see it, come back, send in everything, and then deal with the hundreds of other applicants that are in our system. We say 6 to 8 weeks. Other ones are going to say 90 days. Some of them say like 4 months. After, like not after inspection, but like they'll say after inspection, 90 days until you get your certificate. I've found that the clients that have a better relationship with their certification body and are regularly calling or checking in and saying, hey, I'm curious about this input, and like I just wanted, like, have you guys reviewed it or like anything else? You can't ask specific advice, but just have them know what's going on. And also a good relationship with the inspector only enhances the industry, and also you'll get your stuff quicker, or like you'll be prioritized if it's like, hey, I've got this buyer on the way, but I need to give him my cert. He's coming next week. Typically, we can adjust for that and say, yeah, all right, we'll expedite this. And also, if it's someone that's always calling that's like crotchety and like not great to deal with and is always complaining at us and everything else, like it's just like any other business. It's hard to want to cater to someone else's emergency when we have everyone else's in line for what we're trying to do.
And say you get certified like August 1st, are you good until the next August 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So renewal will typically be sent out before that. So that way you'll submit your what we call them OSP updates, any changes that have been made. And then from there, we'll typically assign an inspection around the same time as last year. It's never the same day, but
It helps just to know that like
every year.
if I were to, apply, say this year, I'm
Yeah.
not half out of the money cert, if you will, if it had to
Exactly.
be done January 1st kind of thing. But
Yeah. And if you applied this year, what would you look to be certified this year? Or just late season veggies or what?
yeah.
Yeah. And I see a lot of folks in your position say like, great, I'm gonna take a look at the OSP, the organic system plan, this fall, and I'll put in my application date like next February. And then that way you have like we'll come out, do an inspection first
time that you're growing anything come April or May, and then you'll be certified for all of next year.
Okay.
As opposed to only getting those late season veggies now, especially if you don't have a market for a value add in the marketplace right now. It's just gonna go to a restaurant anyway, or it's just gonna go to someone that's gonna pay the same price regardless. I would say start at the beginning of the growing season. I mean, but by all means, like, do it. If you're like, no, I'd rather do it
might
now.
be nice to just like get out of the way and be like, all right, now I have until next fall to like do it again.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and you totally could, because then you're just gonna have to do updates instead of the entire plan. So if you have that time this year, by all means, yeah.
what's that? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So
Yeah, that actually was sort of that's my question was, what would you recommend time-wise? Is there a time when you should more, since it's a paperwork inspection to some extent? It's not, I mean, there's a walk through the fields, but it's not like a soil test.
Right.
So it could be done if you applied in January, get the paperwork done and be ready for the next season.
exactly.
But is it harder to get an inspector out? Is everyone applying Q1 and, you know, does that?
So I typically think of my inspections during the growing season for farmers generally, and then for handlers in the winter. And so, and that's typically the way that they come assigned. I have some variation in that. But I have seen where farmers that have a renewal date that's in the winter don't necessarily know what they're going to put in the ground come April. Or they're waiting to hear from whoever they're growing for on what it is that they're growing. So it's TBD as the update, and then it's updated at inspection is not a big deal, especially if you're growing a handful of things. But as soon as you're growing 60 to 90 things, that's a bigger deal.
Was
It
it?
sounded like that.
Sounded like it was that machine. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to
Thank
look
you.
at any of your other slides? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
This one.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Are we on record?
yeah.
Okay, great.
Do you not want to be?
Oh, I can be all the way. Yeah. I mean, what questions do you have?
Parallels and differences between organic and regenerative.
Yeah.
So I
I
do
do
inspections
under the rock
standard regenerative organic certification, which is an add-on. Baseline is being certified organic.
And then there's three components: soil health, animal welfare, and social justice. Those three pillars are the additional on top of organic. And so those things are also audited. The one that pertains specifically to that has the highest overlap would be the soil health, and that the organic regulations say you must be maintaining or building your soil, and regenerative says, no, we're going to take that like a step farther. We're going to require soil tests, not every year, but sometimes, and we're going to require depends on which regenerative you're talking about, because there's Regenified, there's EOV with savory, there's the rock regulations that require additional soil cover year after year after year. What I have seen, specifically with what I'm trained in with EOV, is that I'm looking at like Savory Institute, the client that's attracted to them, and it is pasture management. They have a few vineyards and they have a couple other operations that are doing things, but the vast majority are perennial systems, and there's year-round ground cover, and the monitoring is around looking at what is your litter composite or decomposition rate look like, and what's the bare ground percentage, and how's the microfauna. These are all things that we're not asking me. We'll go out there and say, how's the biodiversity? You say, cool, like there's owl boxes and we've got habitat for foxes and that's all cool. And you write that down, that's awesome. But we're not specifically going out there and giving it a rating of
of a value on what is this compared to what the land's potential is. And that's not organic, but that is what Savory and EOV is doing. I don't know for Genified, to be honest. I've downloaded their guiding principles and their like regulations, and I know that it's nice in that you can just go right in. You don't have the land use requirement. Like you don't have to wait the transitional time, the 36 months for the land use to be eligible for certification. You can go right into it, and as long as you're showing that you're improving year after year, then you can stay a part of that. For all I know, I haven't been trained in that. But with regenerative organic, there's organic as a baseline. I look at the inspection report from your previous thing, or it's an add-on. You're doing both the organic and the regenerative on top of it in the same audit. But with the regenerative, I'm looking at those 3 separate scopes and whichever ones are relevant, and then making sure that everything's compliant still above it. But I will say, regenerative to me seems to be in a space that organic was in the 80s, and that everyone's trying to like claim it, and there's no legal teeth behind it yet. And it's like, okay, I'm a regenerative ranch. Great, that's very different than a regenerative vineyard or like a regenerative like diversified vegetable farm. Like some folks are going to be completely ignoring their annuals, and they're not going to be planting any seeds. They're going to be managing it to graze it differently to see how the land responds and like regenerate the land in that way. And so it's a land management choice, as opposed to someone that's participating in organic. And they're like, we want to care for our land in the best way that we can, and we're growing annuals that happen to be food that we're taking to a market, and this is our business. And like, so it's for a long time, I at every conference I go to, there's always the fight between organic and regenerative, and it just gets exhausting.
Does there need to be a third category? Practically, does there need to be like a new declaration?
So I don't know about a new declaration. I think that might confuse things more because people already have label fatigue. I mean, when you go and look at
Got non-GMO,
non-GMO,
fair trade, and organic, and we've got now, land to market, whatever else. It's not to say that they're doing the wrong thing by pursuing these things, but when it hits the marketplace, folks are confused and tired of trying to decipher what all of these things mean. And
I mean, there's a reverse argument for all of this, and that like the burden is being put on the people that are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But
Like, I hear some controversy with that, like certified naturally grown.
Oh, naturally certified, naturally grown.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that's the thing.
wow.
So and it to the extent that I know about that, much cheaper, much more affordable, much more local markets. You're not selling to King Supers with CNG that I know of. Sorry, people, if you are. But I will say that the oversight, like, isn't legal. Like, there's no like you're going to jail for fraud for
Are
claiming
there
it.
those companies that certify CNG? Like, who's certifying it?
So it's a nonprofit, and the inspector is someone that lives in your region that also does what you do, or something similar enough.
So it's like peer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so by all means, like
Yeah.
people are trying to, exist in a marketplace that don't want to have to deal with everything else and like go CNG all the way. But I know that
I have a good friend, well, my best friend who started the PCO.
Yeah.
And she has thrown a lot of shade on CNG. But she was an organic inspector. Yeah. So, yeah.
What's her name?
Gabrielle Ravegno. Or Ravegno is how it's spelled.
I'm sure we've been on the same calls.
She works for Minnesota Extension now as their like pesticide program.
Sure, sure.
It's just funny.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Yeah, she's my best friend. My other question on the 3-pillar program regulations that you shared earlier on like the social justice pillar,
Yeah.
what do you look for in that pillar?
Yeah, yeah, so, interviewing the workers. Sometimes, you know, with those operations, if it's exempt because it's just family that's doing it, or it's just like a
The child
couple
workers
that is
or-
farming together.
Kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if there's any hired labor, then there's intentional conversations with them. What do the wages look like? What are the hours? How much time are you getting off? Yeah, I know that there's also supplemental labels for those. So like if I go to a grower group in Guatemala and I'm like, oh, you want rock certification, you're fair trade. Great, you've already been audited for that. So that stands in for your social justice pillar, so to speak. Unless I have specific instructions from the certification body saying to verify something that's already in that scope. But it's fairly new to me and I haven't done any in Latin America yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's that.
It's
Soil,
mostly, it's very about workers' rights in that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, workers' rights all the way, and wages and time off and hours worked. Yeah. So, and
And
there's,
conditions in the field,
what do you-
restroom breaks.
Oh, yeah, there,
um,
yep,
Shade,
100%, yes. there's-
water.
Is that
Yeah.
actually an international thing? I mean, I feel like locally, it could be a local SNAP and food access programs that they, so things like that, that would be in that social justice pillar.
It's,
You're saying that as like a social justice thing, but so
Well, as a retailer, whether or not they participate in those programs, it's like a retailer, like you would, so your members would fit it.
interesting to think about.
yeah, for the social justice, I typically will get, you know, that worksheet or that section of the inspection report,
Yeah.
the ROSP.
Yeah.
To complete, and they'll ask specific questions because they've already done the review of the application about what they want me to specifically look at. So a lot of times that comes in as special instructions already, so I know exactly what I'm looking for. So I think that is, it's like verifying work hours, verifying ages, verifying things like that. And definitely conditions, like, yeah, restroom breaks, water, all that stuff. Yeah, I guess the last slide I listed just some folks that I've worked with and found specifically in the organic space to be very helpful. I know that Mad Ag and Rodale are also recipients of the same funding and also help a lot of new farmers. So I would definitely encourage you to reach out to all of them. In the bottom left is CDA. I work specifically in the organic department, but there is our soil health program that is amazing, and they aren't gonna like certify you for anything, but they have an abundant amount of resources and can help with grants and everything else for, sounds like you might be aware, but about what they're willing and able to do, especially for new farmers. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, McLean, thank you very much. This
Yeah.
has been really, really informative.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate you taking the time to come up here and visit with us.